Professor Chandrasekhar M. Biradar, or CM Biradar for short, is an Earth system scientist, landscape ecologist, and green growth leader with 30-plus years of global impact across 50-plus countries. As the founder, chairman, and managing director of the Global Green Growth Community of Practices, he advances regenerative agroecosystems and climate-resilient food systems, advising UNFAO, Rainforest Alliance, PIK, and governments through science-driven inclusive solutions.
Thrivability is really the word that really catch my eyes. And we have been talking about the sustainability for nearly 3 decades in the UN SDGs to the number of the project aspect and education level, but we are already behind the sustainable limits, right? We have to restore to the thrivability. This is where I looking into the grassroots level changes that required. We talk enough on the global scale and COPs and the air, but you need to do something on the ground. That's what we call a local action for a global change. This has become a really widespread way looking at it across the different parts of the world. I traveled, work in the field with ecosystems across the different part of the world. It's very clear that one thing is very striking for me, that our degenerative land use systems, whether agriculture is a number of other, the management aspect or industry, it is unsustainable. So this is where it required something really need a change that bring the green growth. It's basically about economically viable, ecologically sustainable models. This is where I'm just giving the example here of the industrial agriculture, how that degrading the landscape along with the health system as well. So in looking at the standard definition of the health, so that the ecology is missing. So this is where we always call in the Indian tradition that health is wealth. And most of the things looking the very striking that nearly half of the adults are lethargic, and nearly half of the 1/3 of the population diabetic or pre-diabetic, and now the increasing risk of the CVDs, cancer, chronic illness. So that's the populations we are living. It's not just a case, I'm giving the case of the India, but it's throughout the world. So this is where we need to restore the landscape that in the framework of the One Health. So looking at that one, like a soil and stomach are interlinked. And often you think about the happiness comes from the brain, now it's from the stomach. So the gut biome is very important, and this is where all the Panchabhutas work. So we heard about all this, the PIK studies, and the Professor Rockster, the publishing a lot of this thing, the planetary boundary conditions. Look into that, all the out of the 9 boundary conditions, 7 is overshooted already. And one of the biggest land use factors is the agriculture and man-made landscapes. And we all are overshooted that. It is very clear that extreme climate intensifying agriculture in the both a victim and a contributor as to biggest lever to lift as well. Because of this, where the low carbon agriculture and tree-based food systems, sustainable agriculture practices, that's where really the where that's going to be kind of the curse can be become the cure for our sustainabilities. So this way, the simple question is that will agriculture remain the climate liability or become a climate solutions? Let's look over the few of things. So look into the industrial, I started looking at the landscape from the pre-industrial era to the present and the future way. So we need to bend this curve so that we all learn a lot of things from the business as well at the gray level, but little bit things is improved in the orange, was where reaching still the 2-degree temperature. We know that 4-degree green cover reduces 1-degree temperature, but you need to bring the more trees into the landscape. This is where the functional landscape is going to work out. So when looking to the nature-friendly farming to the nature-friendly food systems, it's very clear that soil and food and water, they interlink each other. So the One Health, basic about the health of everything around us, is not just about health of the human beings. The way you produce, consume, dispose, they also link to our functional food system of the future. So when you start looking into the deep into the UN SDGs, all the 7 SDGs, and then planetary boundary conditions, and 4 better models, the FAOs, and I put the agroecosystems at the center. Why? It's because of when you're looking into all the SDGs in the isolations, you're not going to fix that, but they all are interlinked each other. So this is where a critical issue of the millions farmers, and that feeding the billions of the people, but they're facing the harsh conditions in number of levels, whether the floods, a drought, or the risk factor, the insecurity. So we know that farmers grow more because our yields keep on increasing, but they tend to earn always the less, where they produce more, the issue, they produce less, but higher factors remain with the smaller farmers. So this required a paradigm shift from the green growth in agriculture. So that is, I always call the 5S, 5H, high biodiversity in the landscape leads to high carbon in the soil, in the land, that leads to more water, green water in the soil, and infiltration that leads to more natural productivity that become income equity. So that move away from a conventional model where the high input efficiency, monoculture, high emissions, linear value chains, and risk externalized farmers to the agroecological framework, and where the knowledge intensive, data intensive, tree-based and diversified systems, carbon neutral, carbon positive, and circular bioeconomy that leads to reducing the risk factor into the number of levels, whether health of the people and the land. So this is where you started looking into the functional food systems. As I said, that diversity in our gut biome is linked to the diversity in the landscape, and they're interconnected each other. So in the last 30, 40 years, industrial, the agriculture or land use or a manufacturing phase, we look into only the productions and somewhat little bit of services, but you forget the structure and functions and well-being. I think that's what you need to restore. So we're looking into the even like the Australian or US or India, and a lot of the renewable energy, talking about that wind or the solar, but that is much more to do that one. There is still a lot of issues to address there. So this is where the real green energy, the tree-based oils, bio oils, agriculture produces that can put into the main framework. So when you see that rain starts, doesn't matter where, which part of the world, and immediately there is a muddy water flowing in the land, and because of the dead soil, and that leads to flood. Then when rain stops, there is a drought. There's consequences always happening. This is the landscape I was studying in all the river basins of the India, and especially looking into the estuaries, the deltas. So this is one example, of Krishna River. If in the went on the May, its entire river bed is dead, but in the July, when the rain monsoon started, it's a flooded. So when the rain start now, if you visit another month or so, there is no water reaching the oceans. This is because of our soils is dead, our landscape are degraded, and we lost a lot of the tree cover and the buffer. So in order to do that one, we started understanding interconnectedness of the land use, land cover, soil, carbon, water, food, and climate change. Very clear. What the Indian government decided to do a 33% green cover in the agricultural landscape. Increase that leads to the more canopy cover, that's green cover, perennial vegetations, leads to the more groundwater recharge because of the soil becomes sponge and surface runoff became a subsurface flow. This is the example, so that intermediate tree cover and tree-based food system going to change the landscape. So this is where we started looking to the tree-based food system, a feature of the foods and thrivability. And it's not just about only the food, everything, but you have to reach the biodiversity as well. Food, nutrition, medicine, wellness, carbon and biodiversity, resilience and thrivability, and job and the green economy. So should move away from the monoculture to multifunctional landscape. Of course, you're blessed with the phytodiversity across the landscape. It's not just about only in agriculture and the rangelands, but every aspect there is a diversity is there. We map the biodiversity of the India with the come to that so much of the food we always think about there's only the grains and the field crops, but there is so much of the perennial vegetations, whether tree-based food systems and the perennial vegetations, and whether the fruits of the tree-based fruits or the tree-based edible leaves, and that really adds a lot of the things why the trees matters in the landscape. So this is where the agroforestry, from the edible, the flowers, we know that so many the floriculture industry do that when they throw away the flowers, but now the shift from that one that can be reusable. Same thing happens in the every aspect we generate as industrial inputs. So this is the example the introducing to the carbon restoration, the soil, zero tillages, increasing the green cover, 365 green cover. That leads to the at least just 1 gram of the SOC holds about 8 gram of the water, 1% of green cover, soil organic carbon increase the quantum of the amount of the water it holds. So this is where the simple landscape within the few years, the land became in the pre-monsoon, the rains to the monsoon time, and water flowing the very clean, the crystal clear water. That means that land is not the exposed, and soil is not tilled and is always green. This is what you required so that you will increase the groundwater table. That is one of the depleting status in the India facing. So at least 50% of the surface runoff transfer into subsurface flow. That is the green water, soil water, and subsurface water. That is where you achieve the sustainability and thrivability. And this is the examples in the farm. You set it up, and turning to look in the surrounding farms, all are the treeless and degraded landscape, and the small patch of the few acres that turn into the acre by acre into the transitional framework, net zero indeed. And this is what you look into the food forest thriving with the best quality chemical-free fruits despite a prolonged drought. This is the one is the mixed forest we developed, and different trees going together as like a forest, but they're all useful plants. And they're thriving in the despite of the drought in the couple of years ago. And this year is the excess rain. There's more rain, less rain, doesn't matter. It's always thrive. This is the landscape we need to move away from what you call use of field crops and growing a few millets or pulses to the tree-based food systems. And this is the living model people can watch and observe and look into that one. So look into the water budget. So because of many people tell that, oh, it's a dry areas less than I'm working nearly about a decade in the dry area of the world. And always the question is that a rainfall is not enough. Whether take the Australian landscape to the Indo-Gangetic plains to the Middle East or the temperate climates. And because of we lost a lot of the soil sponge, whatever water falls on the rainfall on the ground, that is surface runoff. So just increasing a 1% soil organic carbon in the dry areas, it holds nearly about a one-fourth of the water in the soil, and that is enough to grow the two crops in a season. This is where the FAO's model of the better production, better nutrition, better environment, and better life, that all linked to the tree-based food systems in the landscape, and there's a perennial vegetation play the vital role. It is not just about the farming system level. Even like a small urban landscape, whether the rooftop garden or even the little land area, there are multifunctional the tree system can be done. This is one model I did in US when I was back at grow 237 vegetables in the small landscape. This is where in India, so it's one of the land we bought, and just about the one plot, about 60 by the 80 square feet of the land, we can build into about 50 types of fruit together. This is urban agroforest systems we develop. So like that, there is number of the way to the stimulate the demand and expand affordability by growing the multifunctional food systems, and also the land restorations. The India, just to give an example of India, nearly about the 26 million hectares of degraded lands, and even this is dead lands, completely the rocky outcrop and hilly barren hills that can be restored in the functional food systems, going with all the ecological functions and the multifunctional tree-based systems. And even like I'm giving example here in the APCNF where they're doing a lot of this natural farming practices. We're doing the science of natural farming, what's happening in the soil. And look into that one, the barren surfaces, they grow the only seasonal crops, one or two crops, and left the land is the barren. And taking the temperature during in the month of the May, and is a 54-degree in the barren, and the same land is growing something, the continuous crops in the natural farming, the 35 degrees. 20-degree difference is there. So the entire world is struggling for the 2 degrees, but we can restore in the number of ways. Even comes to the agriculture crops like the rice, where the nearly about 150 million metric tons of the rice production because globally became one of the largest producers in the world. But look into the economics of the water, really about the Ganga, Kaveri, Tunga, and all together put together, that is the amount of the water we use and export that amount of water out. But the same land you can put into the jackfruit or the tree-based food systems, 150 times more productivities, the land is green, less labor requirement, number of things go ahead. I know the time is limited. And we also need to look into the innovative way. We're doing a lot of the testing of this aerial seeding, and with a very unique pelletization of the seeds with a site-specific microbial decoctions and inoculations that can coat it to the seeds, and local seed they can fit in the given landscape. And aerial seeding is about much cheaper, much efficient, and they work much better than the planting. Planting takes about 5 to 10 lakh and even often 50 lakh rupees per hectare. This cost about 18 to 20,000. That is much better. We found out the way the mistake done in the past. We can restore those kind of. So seeding the future through the aerial seeding. Then why tree-based systems and number of functions. Look into whether ecological, hydrological, productive, nutritional, the social equity, and all the contribute differently. That's whether a outcome can be measured. A high-five framework, what I said earlier, high biodiversity leads to high carbon sequestration, and soil water functional productivity leads to social equity and one health energy transitions. So this is where a digital law talk about the previously the speaker and the AI. machine learning, digital agriculture, and the intelligence. This where required is the basically understanding the landscape level and what is happening in the ground level, what is in the farm level. We often do a lot of experiment in the control conditions, but they take them to the farm level, they fail. So that any technology you're developing that you have to be in the farm specific. And luckily, like I just give you the example of India, about over 150 million farmers, and land holding is less than 2 acres, and more than now. The figure is bit older, so more than 80% access to the smartphones. So the technology is there, satellites are there, drones are there, and smartphones in the hand, so we can bring the decision much better level. So that's where the AI augmentation for efficiency, accelerations is a much important. What is happening in the what crop can fit into the particular locations? What combination of the trees, crops, livestock, and people can fit in the given framework? And what can be in-season practice that reduce the input, the cost at efficiency, and how to manage the post-harvest in aggregations, and managing the residue-free produce that are healthier for the both people and the planet. So this is where the AI and machine learning going to work in the different way, pre-planning to the in-season advance the post-harvesting. That's ultimately we're looking into that dashboard can monitor what's happening in the landscape, and then also looking at the perishabilities, and inflation can be checked in this way so that our land become economically viable, ecologically sustainable. So this is where the real grid civilian shift, what I call it as. We teach about the 4 years the agriculture graduations, and none want to do the farming, right? When the particular person do the job in the study in the MBBS, they can become doctor, engineering be doctor, but when do the agriculture, they not want to do the agriculture. Even they want to do the agriculture, they not want to make a profit, because that's where the critical gap is there in the what we learn in the campus life to the countryside, and that need to be even looking at all the civilizations, they collapse because of a collapse in the land use practice in agriculture, and removed a lot of the trees and unsustainable practice that leads to more drought, then become a collapse of the civilizations. And this is where AI taking over a lot of the jobs in the service sector job, and we have to be looking to the land and rural side as our future carriers. And this is where I just looking the statistics of the post the independence of the India and the 50 onwards, and where agriculture is one of the largest allied the GDP contributions in the early, and they're completely vanishing, become almost like an negligible. So while the industry more or less the stable are increasing, but the service sector they went really the important, like all people sitting in the idle job and white collar job and the chair job, what they call it, really soft jobs, and sales and other sector they went, but now they are going to take the different stage. This is what the future of the sustainability. You have to look into the break the carrier, the pathway to monoculture to the more system driven interventions, where the land, life, and sustainably they go together. But in order to do this one, you require a evidence-based rural movement. You're not talking about it just on the digital way, or a books, or a literature, and some of the what you call a lab, the life and campus life that not going to drive, but you have to drive everything into the ground level. So when people and farmers, and the people and farmers, and also the practitioners, intermediators, and all the policymakers, they will see the things happening in the ground, and they really believe it. Seeing is believing the future of the work, and this is where the return to the our livestock based. We are more livestock in the factories, not in the farm. We have to change that dimension. And I recently looking at a lot of how much the footprint of the milk, but actually misled by the number of ways. So that have to look in the different parameters. So this is where we started in the rural movement, and that's where the people moving into the large scale, when they see that really is happening, that one, and that is the tree-based landscape and the livestock-based landscape, the restoring the drylands to the rainfed areas. This is where we need to look into the framework. And this is the just yesterday we had a very huge gathering with a number of the schools, and future educations. What you're talking about educations and responsible citizenship, what we can do here in the much better way. This is where we started understanding the teaching the children in the schools level, and how the soil health, the restorations, every connection they do into the what with the happening with the landscape. That's going to be the future of the landscape. And same thing, the investment landscape, looking at whether 30% climate aid must go to the agriculture. And that is where the future is there, because of the agriculture, the largest emitter at the moment, and also the largest the land use practices. And bringing the investment of $1, it can return the $3. So that is the return of the investment will be there much higher than any landscape. So this is where the future, the green growth. Green growth basically about not just about the human beings, but everything in the one health. Investing in the practices from the sustainability, thrivability, where the economy, ecology go together. So this is what we call economically viable ecological landscape. It's a multifunctional in the future. So this is where vision we put into that one almost like 10 years ago. We started talking about this one after the Eat Lancet Commission report. And vision is that by 2030, at least 30% of the population shift to the 30% of the food, the plate is sustainable. And that's what we call the at least we not talk about every population, at least start by 30%. Of that 30% population, only 30% of food plate into the sustainable way. You already reached the UN SDG goals. But as per the Eat Lancet Commission recommendation, that our food plate must be 50% of the fresh fruits and vegetables and nuts and spices, all those things. And that's where our the future, the vision, the more return of the investment in the green growth that can really viable. So this is where the production follow functions as my closing slide. We need to leverage the technology, diversity, local intelligence, indigenous knowledge and wisdom to restore the lost biodiversity in the mainstream agriculture for healthy living and a planetary health. This is what we call inclusive agriculture for the nourishing livelihoods and landscape. So thank you very much.